Rogues, rascals, reviewables, rorts, rip-offs, receivers, real estate agents, and much, much more. The Many R's Podcast, Season 1, Episode 3. My name is Mark Smith. Call us anytime, 1300 327, or alternatively, go and visit us at our website, dcpartners.solutions/podcast. Use the instant message chats in the bottom right-hand corner to message us in real time. Thanks. Welcome to Season 1, Episode 3. Firstly, our apologies. It's been a bit of a delay between Episode 2 and Episode 3, but here we are, and we're at the end of a huge year. And we've now, after 3 episodes, we've changed our name from the 5 R's podcast to the Many R's Podcast. We're going to deal with all sorts of R's: the rogues, the rascals, the reviewables, the rip-offs, the rorts, the receivers, real estate racketeers, racketeers in general, and all sorts of agents, developers, and anyone that's iffy, shysters, you name it, we're into it. So that's the Many R's Podcast. Can start with R, can not start with R, whatever you like. We'll just deal with anyone. Hey, we're obviously going to touch on corporate villains, our miscellaneous shysters, travel rip-offs. They're becoming less and less. So, but let's see what happens in the coming year. Government malfeasance. Now, we have a massive story, and I'm going to predict it's going to take all of season 2, or call it 2021. It's going to consume all of 2021, and this involves Westpac Bank and the state of New South Wales, the New South Wales Crime Commission, and to a much lesser extent, virtually hardly at all, but there is a little bit of an element of police. Now, New South Wales Police, and I've got to say they come out, in my view, with flying colours. But Westpac and the Crime Commission, you're going to get it for all of 2021. We've got so much stuff, and a few of the lawyers, some of the Westpac lawyers, and some of the internal Westpac lawyers. I've been sitting here for more than 10 years assembling the story. I've got well over 6,000 pages. I've got 40 volumes of documents over my shoulder, and we are absolutely going to unload on Westpac Bank. And look, heads will roll. Heads ought to roll. And so there's that. Insurance rackets. I think we're going to see more insurance rackets, and I look forward to spending the entire 2021 talking about racketeering lawyers. And look, I'm going to say, racketeering lawyers. Pardon me. Racketeering insurance companies. And look, I think these guys are under massive pressure. They lost 5-0 a case on business interruption insurance in the New South Wales Court of Appeal. I saw a story just last night on the 7:30 report. Hey, we've been talking about this for months, and even episode 1, I told you this was going to be a massive thing, and the mainstream media has now caught on. 7:30 reports talking about it. There's been this test case, and so that's a bit of a recap for this year. Now, well, that's a little bit of a recap anyway about the Many R's Podcast. In this particular episode, episode 3, as I said, we're going to review the year and some of the highlights and lowlights. I will say I apologise again for the gap between episode 2 and episode 3. Personally, it's been 2020 has obviously been a hell of a year for a lot of people, and I'm putting the finishing touches on my what's called Juris Doctor. It's a law degree that I've been doing, and I started it in 2014. I finished the 23rd subject a couple of weeks ago, and I've got one subject to do, and boy, have I got some reading. I'll just show you, but this is how much reading I've got to do in the coming months. So I've got one subject. So my apologies for the delay between episodes. Let's talk about what we're going to talk about in episode 3 in particular. And this is a case, we're talking about the Westpac case. Westpac and Victor Warren Ollis. Now, I'll talk about it in more detail, but it's not really about Victor Warren Ollis. This is about Westpac Bank and what thieving bastards that they are. And I'm going to give you a list of everyone that they hurt. Like, it is stunning how many people that they've hurt. They've certainly hurt me, and but I'm going to give you a list of all the people that they hurt. I've got a truckload, not quite a truckload, but I've certainly got 5,000 or 6,000 pages of documents. I've got 40 volumes just over my shoulder, and we've already started building the webpage on dcpartners.solutions. And actually, there you go, dcpartners.solutions/Westpac. It's not up there live yet, but it's coming. So dcpartners.solutions/Westpac. And this is really a story about Westpac and how they use the New South Wales Crime Commission and how the New South Wales Crime Commission allowed themselves to be used and their powers and used and abused. So in this episode, not quite as big a story as the Westpac thing, but Saunders and Staniforth, we've been writing about them on our website and in our blogs at dcpartners.solutions, and this is quite outrageous. This particular company's caused losses for a much smaller group, but we'll talk about that in quite a bit more detail. We're going to have a quick recap on what I think are huge stories, but our business interruption, we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail in a very short segment. I think I want to reflect a little bit on Australia's relationship with China, and we're also going to talk about what that means for the future, especially our trading relationship. It's a real issue, and I did touch on this in episode 1. We talked about foreign money launderers. Now, I wasn't talking about any particular one country, but we'll touch on that later in this episode. Some of my favorite R's. Ralph. There you go, Ralph. Ralph Palagaro starts with R. Ralph's lawyer. Well, I'll come to him in a second. So we've got a segment on Ralph. Mohan Kumar. Now, Rajan. There you go. Chota Rajan. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Another R. Chota Rajan, who is not his real name, but we'll put up his real name. He had a passport and lived here in Australia, just a few suburbs away, actually. And on the whole, like, remarkably, this Mr. Mohan Kumar was extremely well behaved. Well, whilst he was here in Australia. Now, what he did overseas and by remote control, I never met the guy. I don't know him. I know what's reported, and so we'll talk about that. This is a gigantic story. I'm probably going to get sued. I've been receiving very threatening letters, and I'm going to publish the lot of them. These letters were written by Ralph Palagaro's lawyer, a man called John Francis Mahoney. Now, read. I'm going to publish a affidavit which has been read. There's an R for you. There is a cross claim. Sorry, there was a cross claim, and we had an affidavit. I swore it. Absolutely true. There's another affidavit. I think at the time, this was in about 12 months ago. They were sworn about November 2019 and read in court very much about 53 weeks ago, maybe 54 weeks ago, just a little bit over 1 year ago. And we sought to bring a claim against John Francis Mahoney and law cover. And so Mr. Mahoney, if you're reading this, sorry, if you're listening, or reading, whatever. I don't care. We're going to publish everything that you've sent us, provided it's on the record. It's for the record. So we've got a lot to do there. A hugely satisfying thing for me in 2020 was seeing Mr. Hakan Katup go to jail. I reported him, and I'll provide a copy of the statement that I gave to police. And within 1 or 2 weeks, he was locked up. And he got bail, so fair enough. But he's now... I think he did plead guilty. Certainly found guilty, and he's locked up and not sure where he is. So we're also going to touch on our not our AFSL, but the Busy Fund Capital Trust, which I happen to own an interest in. And it is a corporate authorised representative for a company that does have an AFSL. And so we're creating financial products, and we're going to talk a little bit about that and what's to come in next year. Okay, before I get into... Okay, before I get into the real meat of today's podcast, you'll see me throughout today's podcast, maybe stopping and pausing and thinking or reflecting before I open my mouth on occasion. We're now called the Many R's podcast because for a number of reasons, including we've had quite a few upset reactions from some of the parties, the subject of this podcast. So we're now not just into rorts and ripoffs and rascals and rogues, but anything you like, beginning with R or not beginning with R or whatever you like. So it's you call it the many R's, but whatever. We've upset some people, and your host is obviously treading on some toes here, and there may well be a few defamation suits coming. So the truth is an absolute defence to defamation. So, for instance, one of the people today that we're going to be talking about, his friends, his boss, his boss is someone that's allegedly killed 20 people. Or more, we don't know. But his boss is sitting in a jail cell somewhere. And so if we simply say, well, X is friends with Y, and Y is a criminal, and, well, in this case, X holds a power of attorney over Y. So it is, in fact, the truth. If there's a public interest element and all the rest, well, that's the case. So my apologies if I'm a little bit slow and if I stop to reflect at times, because we're going... Okay, so now we're talking about Westpac. This is a painful episode, personally. It cost me an absolute fortune, and I didn't even bank with Westpac. So it was something that I found absolutely astonishing. And to be honest, Westpac, they just blatantly hid various things, and submissions were given to the court. Now, I don't blame the lawyers. I blame the people that instructed the lawyers. And so there is just so much here. But look, the gist of it is that Mr. Ollis had a Westpac bank account. Well, he had a series of bank accounts, and we've got his bank statements. I have 40 volumes of stuff on these shelves. So we'll go through them. Well, I've got probably thousands of pages of bank statements for all of Mr. Ollis's bank accounts, and with Westpac. And Ollis had a couple of particular accounts, and he would write a check and money would just magically appear in his account. And one of the documents that you're going to see quotes Mr. Ollis as saying he wouldn't, was the effect of not looking a gift horse in the mouth. So anyway, I'm sure it wasn't free money, but it's the gist is that Ollis had this account and he would write a check, and Westpac money, it was a Westpac account, and Westpac money would appear sometime very shortly thereafter as cleared funds. And that's probably not so unusual, except Westpac put on evidence, the bank, that the exact words were that no individual in the bank knew. Well, I took the Commissioner of New South Wales Commissioner of Police, and they were very good. I've got to give praise to everything I've seen about New South Wales Police is legit, completely, absolutely, completely legit. Everything that I saw, and I talked to for years. I talked to many people, and I've got nothing negatives to say about New South Wales Police. So much so, I took the Commissioner to I made what's commonly referred to as Freedom of Information, but it's actually called Government Information Public Access. And I took the Commissioner of Police to court to get access to documents, and ultimately I did get access to something like 3,000 pages of documents, and it was right on Christmas Eve. So happy Christmas. Thank you very much, New South Wales Police. So just a tiny little bit further explaining why this is all a problem and why it's important that Westpac's been fully frank with the court. There's a cardinal rule of equity and the rules of equity and the courts of equity. If you come to equity, you have to have clean hands. So if you come to equity, you need to have fessed up to anything. Now, even if you've got dirty hands, your hands can be made clean, but only if you fess up. Westpac went to the New South Wales Supreme Court. This is not something Westpac, a banker, has dreamed up. This is something that some lawyer, and I'm certainly not accusing Philip Crawford. I'm certainly not accusing James Stevenson. Westpac have flaws of lawyers. So some lawyer somewhere has dreamed up this very complex cause of action, saying we're actually the victim. We're the victim of Mr. Ollis's overdrawings, and because we're the victim, that we paid this money under a mistake. So they're saying this guy plundered them and no one in the bank knew. So we're going to pull that apart. Exactly, is that true? That's what the case is about. Because if they don't come to equity with if they come to equity with unclean hands, then the orders that they got can maybe be set aside. You must come to equity with clean hands. And Westpac, it was certainly their case that, quote unquote, precisely, and I'll put up the judgment, His Honour Justice Einstein Einstein, one of the key facts that he found, he was satisfied, and he talks about he goes back and reviews the evidence of a particular person. Now, that he's satisfied that that person had no knowledge, and that may be completely true. But Westpac's of that particular witness, that Einstein was satisfied that that person and his team had no knowledge that Ollis was writing out checks. But the submission, that the submission signed or authored by James Stevenson, and he doesn't dream this up, he must have been instructed and he must have been provided the evidence. Now, whether he's provided all the evidence, and then this is what I'm saying. I don't blame James Stevenson at all. I'm saying James Stevenson, senior counsel, I've never met him, but I know he's not going to get up on his feet or he's not going to put pen to paper, and then Mark Smith can come along 10 years later and say, fraud. James Stevenson, I'm saying his instructions were that no individual in the bank knew. And I'm not saying the name of the person, the lawyer, but a lawyer has dreamed this up, that, yes, we've got unclean hands. Yeah, we knew. Yeah, absolutely we knew. We knew in June or maybe July, but I'm going from the top of my head here. But they certainly knew in either June or July that there was a bug. And at that point, Ollis wrote checks totaling $11 million. But at that point, I think, from memory, he'd only written checks to the tune of about $50,000. And why it's a problem is if you come to equity and you say, Your Honour, this guy, we paid out under a mistake. This guy plundered us and we did not know. Now, the whole thrust of this mistake thing is they were mistaken. And in other words, not grossly negligent. Now, that's what I'm saying Westpac was. They were actually grossly negligent. And that someone figured out that, and I'm not accusing anyone, and I'm certainly not accusing James Stevenson of figuring out and saying, well, we need to concoct. That's it. We need to concoct or just bullshit. I'm not accusing anyone of concocting, especially not James Stevenson, of concocting this story, but some lawyer somewhere on some floor, probably in Martin Place, Westpac's offices there were at 60 Martin Place, or someone close by, possibly someone at Henry Davis York. There's many smart people in there. Someone has concocted this story. We are grossly negligent. In other words, Westpac was grossly negligent. People like Gary Wade, Trevor McMahon, and Mark Murphy must look. If Mark Smith can find it, the police never charged them. Police never, ever charged Victor Ollis with any crime. No fraud, no fraudulent misappropriation, no misappropriation, no larceny, no anything. Ollis committed no crime. Yet Westpac's cause of action was, we were the victim of a mistake. Under a mistake, we paid out money, and Your Honour, no individual, that was what the submissions state, no individual in the bank knew that this was occurring. And I'm saying James Stevenson did not know. It wasn't told the full story. And certainly Justice Einstein, was not told the full story. If James Stevenson, I've never met him, as I said, but I know that he would not commit those words to his submissions if he knew it to be untrue. If he knew that there was a single individual in the bank who was aware of the drawings. And I'm saying categorically, I can give you the staff number. There's multiple people. I've got the dates. I've got the time down to the second where I've got Westpac's internal logs, and all of them, every single thing is going up onto my website, every key document. And if it takes us all of season 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't care. It's all going up unless we sell our manuscript in the meantime. And then it's up to whoever buys the manuscript what they want to do with it. But this is an absolute scandal. The scandal is Westpac gave false evidence. Westpac are liars. Westpac, not Ollis. Westpac are the crooks. I won't go through every person that we're going to talk about, but like I'm just looking at my screen here. There's probably in Westpac, Westpac, the New South Wales Crime Commission, and we will talk about Westpac's lawyers. Now, again, I blame those people that were giving the instructions, not so much the lawyers. But there are some police documents that I will I'll just publish, and you can figure them out for yourself. There's one that particularly comes to mind that they're minutes from a meeting. From memory, it was about August or September 2006, and the police minutes record those that were in attendance. Now, it's a little frustrating, but sometimes, whilst I did get access to New South Wales police documents, and I'm very grateful, and I'm very happy to share them, there are some redactions, and you can't see precisely everything, but I think you'll get the gist of what was going on. But in one particular place, and this is while I'm not blaming lawyers, one of the handwritten notes, which wasn't redacted, says either lawyer or legal. So I'm not specifically blaming, I'm not specifically calling out the lawyer. I can't even name their names. And I'm certainly not making an allegation against the lawyers who I will mention in the next minute or two as people that will feature in this blog. I'm not making an allegation against those particular lawyers, but they work for the bank, and someone, the submission that no individual in the bank knew, well, I'm going to say that's bullcrap. And I'll give you some staff numbers of those people that did know. And look, at the end of this process, I'm actually going to be asking police and probably the Attorney General of New South Wales to go and see whether any witnesses, whether they whether there was any crimes committed in the witness box, and whether anyone's guilty of perjury. I'm going to say Victor Ollis didn't perjure himself. He didn't even take the stand. So the only person that could have given that evidence that no individual in the bank knew was someone for or on behalf of Westpac. And whether that person was telling the truth, I'm going to say it wasn't the truth. Now, that person may have believed it was the truth, but look, someone needs to, I'm talking about the Attorney General of New South Wales, and that's I'm going to make a bold prediction. Someone's going to look at this and look very closely at what was said in the witness box. And if a crime's been committed, look, I'll be delighted if that person goes to jail. So here are some of the names that are going to feature in documents. And I'm not saying these people are guilty of anything. I'm just saying that their details are going to feature. Now, Adrian Holmes, he was my lawyer. And wonderful guy and helped me a great deal. So Andrew Purchase, these are just purely in alphabetical order. So this is not any hit list or whatever. This is just purely alphabetical. Andrew Purchase, he wrote a letter. You're going to see a copy of that letter. Anne Hunter, she was an accountant. Now, she didn't work for Westpac, but we'll explain who she is. Chris Dibb, he's a barrister. Good bloke. I've met him. Claudine Salamar. Now, she worked for the dark side, a lawyer that appeared for Westpac. Whether she knew, whether she didn't know, don't know. Col Dyson. Now, he's a retired policeman. Total respect for Col Dyson. He saw through the bullshit and he ended the police investigation. Col Dyson, you're legit. Daryl Barlow, he's a lawyer that appeared for Ollis. There's some affidavits that I'm saying if he swore it, he believes it's true. Never met him though. Edward Downer. Now, I did meet this guy. Was a lawyer for one of Westpac's lawyers. You might know the name Downer. Alexander. This guy is a dead ringer for Alexander. That's his father. So, not saying he did anything wrong. Just saying he did appear. Frank Mazzone, also from Adelaide, from memory. Gail Kelly. All I'm saying about Gail is I wrote to her, and whether or not I published that letter, I'm not sure, but a bloke called Gwyn Morgan replied. So I definitely wrote to Gail Kelly, and terribly frustrating. Gary Pilgrim. Now, probably one of the victims of Westpac, Gary Wade. Now, this guy, no longer at Westpac. No, retired. Former police officer. He did contact New South Wales Police, and New South Wales Police, I know, told Gary Wade, don't think there's a crime, or we can't. There was a request that Gary Wade wrote, and so I'm going to give you about. Gary Wade was an author of a series of documents. I've got this document like sliced. They say you look at an arrow and the trajectory of an arrow. Well, I've got the still framed photographs of this particular arrow. This letter is the arrow, and you can see this the trajectory of this letter over a period of about 6 days, and even like in one day, you know, over several hours. I've got so many different copies of this particular letter, and Gary Wade is one of the authors. Gwyn Morgan, we talked on. Helen Patrice Nelson. She swore evidence at a particular point. She works for Westpac. She's had 2 stints there. Hussain Karimji, a lawyer for an in-house lawyer for Mr. Victor Ollis. Pretty nice guy, actually, Hussain. Ian Temby. Now, he's a barrister. Might be senior counsel. I think he is. And he's had a fairly distinguished career. And I actually feel some sympathy for Ian Temby. I probably met him, and I've got to say, I reckon by the end, Ian Temby must have been wondering, what precisely is the New South Wales Crime Commission doing here? Yeah, he's a smart guy, and we'll see. James Stevenson, again, barrister. He was retained by Henry Davis York, and he must be senior counsel. I don't know, but we will have a look at some closing submissions that James Stevenson wrote. And now, James, I'm not accusing you of anything other than writing and handing up those submissions. Those submissions may well be precisely the instructions of his client. And let's say I believe they were the instructions of his client. Well, those instructions, the submissions say no individual in the bank knew. Again, I'm going to say I feel sorry for James Stevenson, because what I will show you is that clearly a number of people in the bank had knowledge that checks were being written, large checks. Like Mr. Ollis was writing out checks for $400,000, and like they're not bouncing, they're being honoured. And wow, Jennifer Thomini, now lovely police officer, retired. She was an inspector, and I'm going to say her role was in the asset confiscation unit. She's a wonderful lady, really, really top lady. She's been to my home. Like, she is a good lady and honest. She received some of these letters. She certainly had a phone conversation with Gary Wade, and I'm not saying there was anything improper, but from Jennifer's side. But so we'll see. John Giarduti, interesting spelling, was on holidays at many of the most relevant times. John Giarduti was a very senior lawyer at the New South Wales Crime Commission. John Henry Williams, he's an expert forensic accountant, certainly accountant, worked for PPB, and we'll look at that guy. Not suggesting he's bullshitted, not at all. Jonathan Lee Spark. Now, we're going to have a look at some affidavits that were sworn by Jonathan Lee Spark. He was an officer at the New South Wales Crime Commission, and he's going to come under our microscope. Julie Hanna, Karen Booth, Kate Finnegan, Lou Novakovic. If you Google Lou Novakovic and Police Integrity Commission, Lou worked for the New South Wales Crime Commission and the Police Integrity Commission. You can read the transcripts. Lou was in a senior role at the New South Wales Crime Commission, and well, we'll talk. We'll make sure that there's a very good profile on Lou Novakovic, and I'll upload the transcripts, and you can read them. And these are people inside government. You'd be absolutely nuts if you believed that every single person that worked for the New South Wales government was legit. We'll talk some more about Lou. Mark Murphy. Now, This is a guy that has sat in my lounge room. He came to deliver a court order, and Mark Murphy, former police officer. Now, we are going to look at Mark Murphy under the microscope. We're going to look at the arrow, the trajectory of it, the words that were changed, and we're going to pull those letters apart. And Mark Murphy now works for AMP, but he has had some roles, a former police officer. So I'm going to say he ought to know, as a former police officer, and he ought to know quite a lot about investigations. Well, he was certainly a very senior manager in group investigations at Westpac. And so we're going to spend a lot of time talking about Mark and some of the other people in his team we'll look at as well. So Mary-Ann Aspland. I don't know if I pronounced that. Mary-Ann works in the corrections department, or did, at Westpac at Concord West in New South Wales. And I think Mary-Ann may be one of the people that knew. Certainly, she did know come January 2006, she had a conversation with Gary Wade, and she knew. Now, how much before that and what her staff number is, well, I don't know. So we'll get into that. Michael Sullivan, lawyer at Westpac. Milan Sankovic, a lovely guy, sat in my lounge room and accompanied Mark Murphy. Probably not the author, well, certainly not on paper anyway, that I know of. Neil Saviri, another guy in Westpac Group Investigations. Nick Kabalafkas. I'll put up some transcripts of what Nick Kabalafkas, what his submissions to courts were, and we'll see. Noel McCoy, another lawyer at Henry Davis York. Peter Flynn, Dr. Peter Flynn from Chatswood, victim of Westpac Bank. Rob Whitfield. Now, there's several affidavits, and I'm just going to say, don't really want to be sued, but Rob Whitfield went and worked he was someone that was in line, apparently, to take over from, maybe it was David Morgan, who was the CEO at the time, and before Gail Kelly, and then after Gail Kelly, I think he was in the running as well. I don't know who came after her, but one of the top 1, 2, 3, 4, however, top handful of executives at Westpac Bank, extremely high powered. He left the bank and went and worked for Mike Baird. You might know that name. Mike Baird was the Premier of New South Wales at the time. Not suggesting that Mike's done anything wrong at all. I'm just saying Rob Whitfield probably has friends in incredibly high places, and that's nice. But Rob Whitfield is quoted in affidavits of saying various things. So we'll have a look at that. Bob Reynolds. Pretty sure I met Bob around a huge table in the New South Wales Crime Commission at sort of informal mediation. He appears as a witness in the Westpac proceedings, the civil ones, and he had an incredibly senior role managing the Ollis bank accounts. Rob Colwell. I kind of get a couple of these names confused. I think we'll put up his profile, Robert James Witheridge. Now, pretty sure I get these two confused, Robert Colwell and Robert James Witheridge. One or both of those people worked at Concord West in corrections. And when I say corrections, I don't mean jail. I'm talking about journal entries, mistakes, like cashing a check for $400,000 kind of mistakes. Not calling them incompetent, but calling them witnesses. And those last two, I'm pretty sure, gave evidence, and we'll put up their affidavits. There's just so many that I'm sorry, I forget some of these. Now, one that I don't not that I don't forget, I confuse some of their roles. But I tell you what, Ron Sansa, I don't forget him. I had a phone call and kept notes. One of my habits, if you look at my bookshelf on either side, I love books. I love paper. I love documents. And I remember shit. Ron Sansa, over there for probably more than 20 years, I kept journals. And Ron Sansa figures in a journal. And Ron Sansa was very candid with me. And I had a conversation with him, I believe it was on about the 6th of February, 2006. And he candidly told me that he worked for the New South Wales Crime Commission. I had cordial dealings with him. He said that Westpac would be getting their money back, which is kind of a strange thing for a government official to say, when that government official and that government agency, the New South Wales Crime Commission, their job is to confiscate money and not give it back to the criminals. The law says that we're going to give the money to the Treasurer of New South Wales. And at the time, at one stage, the Treasurer of New South Wales was certainly Mike Baird. Now, in 2006, when this was all happening, it wasn't Mike Baird. Definitely was not. Ron Sansa and New South Wales Crime Commission had powers and used them in a way with an intention not to give the money to the victims of crime, like the Treasurer. So Sarah Rogers, she was a clerk at Westpac at Gosford, no longer works there. I've talked to her, I've certainly rang her, I've emailed her. I can probably even provide copies of the emails. No longer works for Westpac. A witness, she certainly appears in some of those police minutes, and she had dealings with Mr. Ollis, and she opened accounts. And again, we can pull apart some of these documents. Trevor Holmes, Stephen Holmes, that name is vague to me. But apparently we're writing about him. So we've got a profile on him. Trevor McMahon. Now, this guy I do know. Trevor was, if not the boss of Mark Murphy and Gary Wade, and probably Neil Severi, in some way senior to them. A very cunning senior investigator. He certainly features in some of the affidavits. So if you get the impression we've got rather a lot of people to go through, you'd be spot on. So I'm just out listing some of the characters that we're going to be reviewing over the balance of season 1, 2, 3, however long it takes. I don't care. There will be a book published, and my my manuscript is actually for sale. So anyone that's interested in buying that manuscript, give us a call, 1300 327 123, and you can buy the manuscript if you like. But at least all of those people are going to be mentioned there at some point. Oh, obviously, Victor Ollis and his missus, a lady called Gail Shields. Some of the Gail's children, surname Lye, L-Y-E. So some of the Lies, funny name, ironic, are probably going to get a mention. Chris Lye, I mean, I don't think terrible things about any of these people, but Chris Lye was followed. He gave evidence that he was followed by Mark Murphy and realised he was being followed and stopped and said, hang on, you're following me. What's your name? And the guy said, Mark Murphy, and handed over his business card. And Mark Murphy later turns up on police raids. Now, I'm not being critical of police, but maybe I am slightly, or maybe maybe that's unusual. Maybe it's not. But I would have thought police raids were for police, and gathering evidence was a fairly important thing that ought to be done by police. And normally if I go to police and want to allege, you know, we're the victim, the victim's role is not necessarily, I wouldn't have thought the victim's role is to assemble the evidence. I kind of think that's for police to do. Mark Murphy attended some of the raids. According to Chris Lye, he gave evidence that the person that followed him subsequently turned up with a search warrant, with police who had a search warrant, and I don't know. But I tell you what about Mark Murphy. He's not going to be able to say he didn't know. And so Mark Murphy knew quite a lot. I mean, he was there, according to Chris Lye. He was there when houses were raided. He certainly came and sat in my lounge room. Maybe it was dining room. Can't remember which one. I met him. So there are a series of pages at our website, www.dcpartners.solutions/Westpac. And there is so many facts, like all 4,000 pages, they are not up. And maybe that's an incentive for someone that's interested in this particular book and manuscript. Well, get in now, because like there'll be lots and lots of scoops still to come. There's only 4, 5, 6, I don't know how many thousand pages, thousands of pages, and that probably doesn't include all the emails and you name it. So, but we've got a complex story to tell, and so we've broken this up into who, what, where, how, why, when, and those sorts of things. So those are the types of topics, and you'll be able to, you know, go to our site and we'll just type in Westpac who, Westpac when, Westpac why, Westpac how, and there you go. So probably I'm forgetting someone. Please don't feel forgotten. I'm sure if your name appears in any of those thousands of pages, those 40 volumes, you'll get a mention at some point. So I hope that gives you a sense of just how huge this particular case is. By my reckoning, I certainly gave evidence in the Supreme Court of New South Wales that one of my companies probably lost because of Westpac. Because of, well, Westpac certainly gained millions. Let's put it that way. So I believe that may well be a crime, even if one of the crimes is to gain a financial advantage. Like I said a few minutes ago, you'd have to be nuts to believe that there are no criminals working in the New South Wales state government. Well, the Royal Commission has shown us that you would be nuts to believe that there are not dodgy people working at Westpac. And I'm not saying any of those people that I've just listed are dodgy. I think we've forgotten someone, Philip Crawford. Philip Crawford, he is right now the chairman of the New South Wales Independent Liquor Gaming Commission, whatever, something like that. Philip Crawford and his commission is deciding whether James Packer and Crown Sydney ever get to take a bet. Well, Philip Crawford, all I'm accusing Philip Crawford of is being the lawyer for Westpac, and now's the time. I've got to be very careful with my words. I'm accusing him of being the Westpac lawyer. I'm accusing him of being a senior partner. He might have been managing partner even at certainly one stage. I think he was at Henry Davis York. Whether his name is the redacted name that attended police meetings, he probably didn't. Some lawyers did. According to the police minutes, a lawyer or Westpac legal, whatever, something like that, some lawyers, either in Westpac or in Henry Davis York or someone else, somewhere else, did attend. Now, their names are redacted. Philip, let's say he's the partner. I know for sure he was a partner of Westpac. Sorry, he was a partner at Henry Davis York. He may have been managing partner. I guess that carries responsibilities. Who precisely instructed James Stevenson? I don't know. All I know is that James Stevenson received instructions. I certainly don't believe James Stevenson made up his instructions. Whether Philip Crawford played any role in instructing James Stevenson, I don't know. But I can guarantee you one thing. I'll be asking the Office of Legal Services Commissioner to investigate the firm. Probably every lawyer that had any role, and I'm not accusing them all of being crooks. I'm probably not accusing any of them of being crooks. But somehow instructions found their way into court. And those instructions were that no individual in the bank knew that Westpac was cashing Mr. Ellis's checks for $400,000 at a time. And apparently no one knew. Like, just this money's just magically appearing. Well, I'm saying that is horseshit. I'll give you the staff numbers. I'll get the police records. Some people did know. I'm not saying Philip Crawford's one of them, but I'm saying some people knew. Now, those some people may have all lied to Philip Crawford. We'll see. A lot of issues here. That is Westpac Anolis. We're going to be talking about this non-stop. Thank you. All right, this second story is about Saunders and Staniforth and a firm of valuers and town planners at Orange, and particularly it's a reasonably short block. It's about this valuer and town planning firm in Orange. Their director is a guy called Andrew Saunders, who I met in person in maybe 2007 or 8 in that vicinity. I can't tell you off the top of my head, but I certainly met him in one of those years. And I also met a bloke called Bob Patfield, and well, there'll be a lot more detail about Saunders and Staniforth in the next little while. What I can say is insurance rip-offs, by the way, racketeers, insurance racketeers. Andrew Saunders is a member of something called the Australian Property Institute. And when you're a member of the Australian Property Institute, sort of members of the public can write to the Property Institute and nothing but praise for the complaints panel. And the chair of this particular panel was a guy called Chris Shaw. I've never met him, never even talked to him. Googled him, and you can have a look at his profile, and there's a link on our page there as well to Chris Shaw. I'm sure he's extremely honest. He's a lawyer. I'm sure he's a very good lawyer. And he ran the panel, and a complaint was made about Andrew Saunders that had a number of complaints, a number of heads of complaint, if you like. And Andrew Saunders was ultimately, there was two phases to the complaint handling process, and that was sort of addressing the complaint and looking at the substance of it. Well, it was certainly found by Chris Shaw, who's far from an idiot. It was found that there was a prima facie case on more than three aspects of the complaint. Ultimately, there was the complaint, if you like, was upheld, and so in other words, found to be valid. And some of the one of the breaches of the Australian Property Institute's codes was very much a fundamental rule, and that was Rule 1.1. Now, I'll include links to our particular blog, but you can go to this podcast page at dcpartners.solutions/podcast, and Andrew Saunders breached, like, the first commandment, Rule 1.1. So I'm saying this is a big one. The first commandment, in certainly Rule 1.1 includes words like dishonest, like thou shalt not be dishonest, thou shalt not be biased, you must do your work with integrity, honesty, blah, blah, blah. Well, you can read the sanction report. There's a link. It's up on our website now, www.dcpartners.solutions. You can go straight to the sanction report. There's a Google search box within. If you just Google DC Partners sanctions Saunders, I'm sure it'll come up very prominently, and you can read what the very intelligent Chris Shaw determined. I'm sure he had a panel of people that helped him come to this view, that Andrew Saunders breached Rule 1.1. Now, that wasn't the only one he breached. There was prima facie cases for several of them. It was certainly three of the codes that valuers sign up to, Andrew breached. Subsequent to that, Andrew did not appeal. So you may view that as Andrew accepting. I don't know if he pleaded not guilty. Not 1,000,000% sure of those, but certainly it was found to have breached. There's going to be a lot more content on this particular person and company, Saunders and Staniforth, Andrew Saunders. Now, insurances. When you're a valuer and when you're valuing properties, worth hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, it's kind of important that you be honest. And if you go out to a property and you think it's worth, mistakes can be made, and so these valuers carry insurance for what's called professional indemnity in the event that they made a huge blunder. Then a valuer carries these insurances. So quite normal. So Andrew has notified, we know by reading the sanction report, Andrew Saunders has notified his insurance. So he has insurance, he notified them. His insurance company is represented by a firm called Colin Biggers and Paisley. And the partner that my company's suing Andrew Saunders, or in fact, really, they're suing his professional indemnity provider. So in other words, an insurance racketeer. And the insurance racketeer is using Colin Biggers and Paisley lawyers. And when I say insurance racketeers, well, we know that Andrew Saunders has been sanctioned. Andrew Saunders has not appealed. Andrew Saunders' firm, we say Andrew Saunders' firm, Bob Patfield. Well, Andrew Saunders says that his business merged with the business of Bob Patfield in 2005. Bob Patfield in 2006, 2007, 2008, and 2009 conducted valuations. There were several properties. So a number of them were of some of the relevant bits. Andrew Saunders and Staniforth definitely did a valuation in 2010. So even if Bob Patfield didn't merge, as Saunders' website said they did, but let's say they were lying. Well, we know for sure that Saunders and Staniforth, it's uncontested, they did value the property, one of the properties, that the problematic property, in 2010, about April. And on Andrew Saunders' own evidence, the property went down in value between 2010 and 2014. And it went down in value quite a lot. According to Andrew Saunders. So you could say that that's an admission of loss. there's evidence there that the valuer, if they're not being dishonest and not being biased and all the rest, then that's rule 1.1, then Andrew Saunders admits the property is worth less in 2014 than what they said in 2010. And really, if Bob Patfield is part of Saunders and Staniforth, and Andrew Saunders has sworn that he's not, although Andrew Saunders also put up on their website, said that their company, Saunders and Staniforth, did merge with Bob Patfield. Well, so there's all sorts of suggestions that there was a loss. Andrew Saunders has notified his insurer. We know that because he said so in the sanctions report. And Colin Biggers and Paisley have turned up. Now, we're trying to subpoena some of this information from the lawyers for Saunders and Staniforth, which is Colin Biggers and Paisley, or shall we say the insurance racketeers lawyer is Colin Biggers and Paisley. The partner that's handling it is a man called Jonathan Newby, and the special counsel is a lady called Jane O'Neill, and some of the other solicitors there are Jack Golding and Nathaniel. His name will come to me. Poor Nathaniel. I mean, he looked like a deer in the headlights. 4th of December, he was really thrown under the bus. 1st of December, 9:28, I think the time was, we electronically served documents upon Colin Biggers and Paisley. We know that they got them because our emails are tracked, and we know that they opened the email at 9:41 on the 1st of December. And look, I'm saying someone at Colin Biggers and Paisley is either doesn't know how to open emails, or a person misled the judge. Because on the 4th of December, a barrister by the name of Brett Lepastriere, I'll spell that, I'll put his surname there, got to his feet and said at one point, was the effect, we were never served. We haven't seen that particular evidence, that affidavit, and not accusing Brett Lepastriere of lying. However, Brett Lepastriere did admit on his feed, he's a barrister, got a very good CV, this guy. So I'm going to say he knows what he's doing. Not an idiot. Well, Brett Lepastriere had in his possession, there was an exhibit to the affidavit, and parts of the exhibit sitting there in the court, and we get up and tell Her Honour, Your Honour, they haven't received our document. Well, how come I can see it from here? We can see the exhibit. Poor Brett had to then get to his feet and say, oh, well, Your Honour, we received the 370-page attachment, but not the affidavit. So this is sort of head-scratching stuff. Colin Biggers and Paisley. If you're a client of Colin Biggers and Paisley, you need to be incredibly concerned that they don't know how to open an email. if you believe Brett Le Pastorier. Now, you'd like to think a barrister is telling the truth when he gets to his feet and when he's addressing a judge in the District Court of New South Wales. You'd like to think that he's not. The standard is expected that he's telling the truth. Well, we know. I'm going to publish this. And we've ordered the transcript. We know that the submission that Mr. Le Pastorier gave was, this is the first time, to the effect, this is the first time I'm seeing this. This affidavit that Mr. Smith's talking about, this is the first time I'm seeing it. Now, I would like to believe Mr. Le Pastorier, but Colin Biggers and Paisley, the emails tracked, and between the 1st of December and the 4th, that's 3 days, that email is open in excess of 50 times. From memory, I think the number is 54. 54 times. And they did not see. The subject line talks about service. The first line says, maybe it's the second line, we provide by electronic service the motion and affidavit in support. Now, Brett Le Pastorier, he has a impressive CV. So he's not an idiot. He informs Her Honour that this is the first he's seeing it. So are we to believe that Colin Biggers and Paisley send lawyers to the court, send barristers on behalf of Colin Biggers and Paisley, but they don't brief them? They don't tell them, oh, this might come up because it's a motion, it's been filed and it's been served. It might come up. This is quite unbelievable. So on one hand, you've got, and then there's the issue of contempt. So on one hand, you've got Andrew Saunders. There's a sanction report. You can go to our website right now and you can read it. It goes for about 10 pages. It talks in plain language and says, this happened and we find you guilty. We subpoena, give us a copy of the merger between Andrew Saunders and Bob Hatfield. We subpoena these documents. So that's an order of the District Court of New South Wales. The District Court of New South Wales hereby orders Saunders and Staniforth hand over these documents. That's the 9th of July. 4th of December, just completely ignored it. Colin Biggers and Paisley, well, completely ignored it. So, and the motion that they've been served electronically, and we know that they've received it because, like, Brett Le Pastorier is carrying the documents that were attached, 377 pages of them. He's carrying those, but he gets to his feet and says, well, Your Honour, this is the first time seeing it. This is strange. That's what I'm accusing Brett Le Pastorier, Jonathan Newby, Jane O'Neill, Colin Biggers and Paisley, Jack Golding, Nathaniel, can't think of his surname. Very forgettable guy. Nice young guy. Didn't want to talk after court. Just wanted to get the hell out of there. Poor guy. Poor Nathaniel. I'm accusing them of struggling with the basics of email. There you go. Either that or the lawyers have instructed the barrister to lie. Now, I don't think he's disreputable, so maybe they just neglected Colin Biggers and Paisley. Maybe they just neglected to... Jane O'Neill was on holidays, so it could be that the work experience girl was handed the file, and the work experience girl is has never opened an email in her life, and somehow did see that there was a 377-page attachment there, but somehow didn't see that there was a notice of motion with an affidavit in support. So the work experience girl is handling things apparently at Colin Biggers and Paisley. Maybe they've employed Magoo as their newest partner at Colin Biggers and Paisley, and poor Mr. Magoo, can't see. He can see the 377-page document, but couldn't see the originating process. So, and on top of that, well, they're in contempt. 9th of July, maybe the 10th. 9th is the subpoena has been granted, issued, and on the 10th they've been served. We know that they got it because they wrote to us, about the 20th, maybe 21st, 22nd, and said, well, you better withdraw this because, nasty threats. Well, we didn't withdraw it, and they still haven't applied to set it aside. So they're certainly liable to be found in contempt. So Saunders and Staniforth are found, well, not found, but they're liable to be found in contempt. Andrew Saunders breaches Rule 1.1. He breaches Rule 6.3b and 6.3 or 4d or something like that. So if you're thinking of engaging a valuer or a town planner, it's all there for you to have a read of. If you know anything about Andrew Saunders, if you know anything about Bob Hatfield, the merger, maybe you used to work there, maybe you're a client, maybe you've had some experiences with Colin Biggers and Paisley, maybe you've come across some racketeer lawyer, maybe you're the work experience girl, maybe your name is Magoo and you work at Colin Biggers and Paisley. If you want to clear the air, on our website, www.dcpartners.solutions, bottom right-hand corner, we've got a chat tool there and we'd love to talk to you. Okay, we're now going to turn to one of our favourite R's, Ralph Pelligaru, Ralph Ignatius Pelligaru, formerly of 88 Perfection Avenue, Stanhope Gardens. I can give you the name where he currently lives is on the bankruptcy notice. So if you want to get in touch with Ralph, he's a wonderful guy. I've even published his phone number, his email address. You can contact him all you like. Add him as a friend, become a friend. Ralph's going to need a few friends. So Ralph, well, I met Ralph in March of 2017 and he'd taken out some loans. These are on the record because these are subject to things that were published and read in the New South Wales Supreme Court in December of 2019. We put on an affidavit, I did anyway, and the evidence there, I'll make sure I put up my exhibit, which contains a copy of the loan documents. I think the loan statement is there as well. So Ralph took out a loan. Now, this was not an oppressive loan. Ralph asked for it. He took out a loan for $114,000 in about August 2017 on a one-year term, 1 year. So this is just after the sale of 632 Old Northern Road, Dural. And Ralph took out a loan from a company called Reliance Leasing. Now, that loan hasn't been paid back and it got assigned to my company, DCP Litigation Holdings. So any dollar that was owed under that loan to Reliance Leasing is now owed to DCP Litigation Holdings. And the assignment happened in about September 2019. Ralph took out a 1-year loan, interest-free, $114,000. So you can't say that that's unfair. That is incredibly fair. He asked for it. He wanted it. He got it. So an interest-free loan for $114,000 is not an unfair loan. Now, in August 2017, so that's 1 year after he took it out, it's due to be repaid. And he then goes and borrows, not from us, we won't give him any more money, but he goes and borrows from Franklin Yeezy Proprietary Limited, $540,000. And the terms are that in default, I think not in default, the terms are about 3% per month. So a lot of money, about, from the top of my head, $15,000 a month. Something like that, maybe 16. But if he's in default, and from memory, it was a 3-month loan. So 3 months and 1 day, if you haven't paid it back, well, you need to roll it over or come to some arrangement. And if you don't, then the default terms are 6% per month. So in the first month, it becomes about $32,000 in the first month interest. Now, if you haven't paid that, like that's a year's wages for someone. And look, I've got a copy of Ralph's tax returns. He gave them to me. He's waived all privilege, and they may well have been filed in court as well, Ralph's tax returns. Well, Ralph doesn't... Okay, Ralph declared an income not a whole lot more than $32,000 per month. So you could say that this is very high risk borrowing. Now, our stuff was 0% interest, not 3%, and certainly not 6% per month. So we had an extremely good arrangement in his favour, and he was required to pay our loan back in 1 year, and didn't. Our case, and I'll put up a copy of our case. Our case was that when he went to refinance these monies, Ralph requested a withdrawal of our caveat, which Reliance provided and then withdrew. And we've got it in writing that the authority, that the withdrawal of caveat was to be held in escrow, wasn't to be handed over, and it was handed over. And the lawyer acting for Ralph Palagaru was John Francis Mahoney. And John Francis Mahoney is holding this. The case is that John Francis Mahoney was holding this withdrawal of caveat in escrow, and as he's our fiduciary, he's I actually do some work for Reliance Leasing. So the case is, and the we sought the leave of the Supreme Court of New South Wales to claim against John Francis Mahoney that, and law cover, that John Francis Mahoney was our fiduciary, and he owed duties to Reliance Leasing. And this is about the 8th of August. On the 8th of August, he gets messages in writing, and we've got copies of those, and there's attempts to phone. And the instructions are he must, and representations, not necessarily from Mahoney, but from Ralph, were provided that there must be additional security, because there's only so much equity left in Ralph's house. And the messages to Mahoney was that, or possibly to Ralph, but the messages were, well, we're up to 90% gearing. So it may have even been 92% gearing. So in other words, virtually no equity. And we've done Ralph a favour. We've given him an interest-free loan. So we said, okay, give us some extra security. Give us a charge over Ralph's interest in 632 Old Northern Road. Now, I have to be slightly careful here. Around that time, I met Ralph in March of 2017, and I believe in June of 2017, I became aware because Ralph disclosed to me that he had a confidential heads of agreement, which gave him he entered into it before he entered in the confidential heads of agreement. He entered into that before he entered into the contract to sell the land. So he entered into this confidential heads of agreement that says what it says. And it says that, in effect, Ralph will end up with a 20% interest in Ralph personally, it names Ralph personally as the beneficiary, in a private hospital. So Ralph will end up with a 20% interest in a private hospital for nothing. Now, who wouldn't want one of those? So Ralph had appointed an estate agent to sell the property. It came out that Ralph had sent that estate agent a bill for a referral fee for $60,000. So these are all these little benefits that Ralph is getting, well, thinking he's getting, or Ralph is seeking to obtain. Ralph, at the same time, is employed by this man called Mohan Kumar, and Mohan Kumar is paying Ralph a monthly retainer. I've got documents from Mahoney where Mahoney describes Ralph as Mohan Kumar's Australian manager, to that effect. So think of it like this. I employ Ralph. Do I expect some fidelity from Ralph? Do I want him to be looking after my interest because I'm paying him a wage or, retainer every month? Anyone that I employ in my company, look, I expect them to have my interests at heart. If you run a corner shop and you employ Freddie as a assistant, well, you don't want Freddie to be pinching, if that's the term, pinching the cookies. Well, Mohan Kumar is at a huge disadvantage at this point. He's sitting in a jail in India. So you could say he was disabled. And Ralph is out there. Ralph was his power of attorney, and Ralph was instructed to sell the property. So Ralph did that part. Now, when you appoint an agent, well, there's usually going to be a commission. And, Mohan Kumar, I'm sure, probably wanted to pay the cheapest commission. Did he intend for Ralph to get another year's salary paid by the estate agent as a sort of finder's fee? Or did Mohan Kumar, who's paying Ralph's wages or paying him a retainer, did Mohan Kumar expect Ralph to do things looking after Mohan Kumar? I probably think most employers would expect their employee to do the right thing and look after the employer's interest first. So anyway, after the property's sold, well, we're going to put up the precise. I've already done it. I put up the chronology of how 632 Old Northern Road was sold. An estate agent, Brooks Partners, was appointed. At some point, Craig Adams comes along, says he's looking for some maybe an option at some stage, and vendor finance. This property is worth $5.5 million. The deeds are handed over to Craig Adams for $1.5 million. A $5.5 million property is transferred to Craig Adams for $1.5 million plus a $4 million loan. And so we're saying as Reliance, well, we want a share of, we want our security. There's no equity left at 88 Perfection Avenue, Stanhope Gardens. We want our security. We just want to charge the loan to Ralph for $114,000 says that we get a charge over Ralph's property. At that time, August 2016, he had already entered into the heads of agreement, the confidential heads of agreement with Craig Adams, saying he'll get a 20% interest in this private hospital. So it's charged. After August, after our caveat held in escrow by John Mahoney gets handed over, and we don't get a charge on Dural. John Mahoney writes to me and says, no, Ralph has no interest in in 632 Old Northern Road. No interest. And John Mahoney even wrote to me and said, if Ralph said he owns the Sydney Harbour Bridge, or maybe it was the Sydney Opera House, I can't remember. It was one of those. If Ralph said he owns the Sydney Opera House, does that mean he's got an interest? Now, clearly, Ralph has no interest in the Sydney Opera House. But did he have an interest in 632 Old Northern Road? Ralph later put a caveat on 632 Old Northern Road saying, yes, he did have an interest. Yet Mahoney, and I wonder whether Mahoney swore that. What I can tell you is Ralph, probably and Amrita, but definitely Ralph, put a caveat on 632 Old Northern Road saying he absolutely did have an interest in Old. But Mahoney has handed over our caveat on 88 Perfection Avenue, our being Reliance's, which assigned to me, and as then in September, maybe October, November, said that no, Ralph, we're not giving you any extra security over 632 Old Northern Road because Ralph actually doesn't have any interest. So these are all very important because John Mahoney is not only Ralph's lawyer, but he is the lawyer for the real owner of 632 Old Northern Road, or at least the former owner, Mohan Kumar. So Mohan Kumar is owed $4 million. And at the same time, in August 2017, Mahoney is issuing invoices to the purchaser. So he's acting for three parties with an interest, with three different interests in the same land, and he's our fiduciary. So it's a rather unusual set of circumstances, and we sought to have leave from the Supreme Court of New South Wales to run a cross-claim against John Mahoney for handing over our withdrawal of caveat when instructed not to. So it is a fact, he handed it over. So look, at this point, Ralph, it's now December 2020, 20. Well, Ralph, under the August 2016 loan, paid back not one single cent ever. 114,000 interest free, never paid back one single cent. The proper, and even worse than that, he put us to tens of thousands of dollars of legal expense to protect our interest. So he even denied through Mahoney, and possibly in his defence, he denied that he owed any money whatsoever to Reliance Leasing. Putting aside, he signed it. He gave us a caveat. We had it there. They lifted the caveat, and then they put another caveat back on. He claims that he had nothing. So what am I saying about Ralph? Well, Ralph looks after Ralph's interest. Ralph makes, from my experience, talking personally here, Ralph will make you promises. He'll even sign things. He'll promise you the world. But sometimes Ralph's promises are not kept. So Ralph, let's talk about Mohan Kumar. Now, Mohan Kumar left Australia on the, and I mentioned he's in jail. He left Australia in October 2015. A couple of weeks before he left, he hands Ralph a power of attorney. Now, I'm saying the power of attorney is properly documented and is registered. So it's legit. The power of attorney is legit. There's no clauses in there that say that Ralph is entitled to confer on himself benefits. In other words, he can't just get the $5 million piece of land and go and give himself a 20% interest in a private hospital. Now, Mahoney later says, well, no, that was really held for Mohan Kumar. So maybe Ralph is concealing assets for Mohan Kumar. I don't know if that's illegal. I do know that Mohan Kumar is not a resident of Australia, and I believe people that are not residents of Australia must get approval for their investments. So they, you know, if someone wanted to buy the property next door from China or India or wherever, Timbuktu, well, they have to make an application. In certain circumstances, there are exceptions, but in certain circumstances, they have to make an application to the Foreign Interest Review Board. So the owner of a private hospital probably, I'm not an expert here, but probably needs to make an application to the Foreign Investment Review Board to be approved to, so they don't let people that are money launderers, for instance, or gangsters, probably, people that are out there killing 20 people and involved in extortion, and you know, Crown Casino has got problems because, you know, occasionally a gambler comes through there with dirty money. So this is a real issue, and I've talked elsewhere in the podcast that we want to talk about. You know, foreigners and money laundering. And I'm not just talking about Chinese or Indian or Calathumpians, doesn't matter. Any money launderers coming to Australia with their money, it's legit to discuss it. So the Pelagaru thing is, you know, real. No, sorry, I was talking about Mohan Kumar. So Mohan Kumar is, his lawyer is Mahoney. His power of attorney is Ralph Pelagaru, and Ralph has attempted to help himself to a $60,000 kickback from Brooks Partners Real Estate. Now, Brooks Partners didn't deny that there was a debt, if you like, or arrangement. Shall we say, we'll just say arrangement. They didn't deny that there was an arrangement. They just said that it was not enforceable because Ralph's not a real estate agent. That's quite true. Ralph is not a real estate agent, and therefore, under the the various Stock and Station Acts, Stock Station Agents Acts, they can't pay a commission to someone who's an unlicensed agent. Absolutely correct. Ralph wasn't an unlicensed agent. Now, they never said we never made that arrangement with Ralph. They just said they can't pay it. It would be an offence. So, for many reasons, Brooks Partners is correct. Now, Brooks Partners also possibly have another problem in that after the property was sold, they kept on sending the rent money to Ralph. So, at least some of the rent money every month went to Ralph. Now, what did Brooks Partners know when they introduced Craig Adams and they acted for the vendor? So that means they owe a duty to the vendor, Mohan Kumar. Well, Brooks Partners were a party to this deal. They did the introduction and they became the managing agent. They collected the rent and part of the rent, which then belonged to Craig Adams's company, they knew, and they paid that to Ralph. So Ralph goes from working for Mohan Kumar up until the date the property settles, 632 Old Northern Road, to now receiving money from the purchaser, but still owing a duty to he's the power of attorney to Mohan Kumar, and who's owed $4 million. So it's a very messy, dirty, we'll just say messy arrangement. And Ralph, Mohan Kumar's owed $4 million. Ralph decides to assign that debt to me, to my company, for collection. So Ralph assigns that in about July 2018. He assigns that and then says that come the 8th of maybe the 9th of January 2019 says, oh, no, didn't do it. It's in writing. It's witnessed. He said, his lawyer, John Marnie, our friend Mr. Marnie, said Ralph only entered that under duress. Well, duress means I held a gun to his head. So in a office building, in a public space, surrounded by 20 or 30, 50 people on the floor, Ralph, he didn't even sign it once. He signed it twice. He signed it in July of 2018, allegedly with a gun to his head. Then he says that in November of 2018, he amends that deed and his wife witnesses it. And he amends a second deed. And apparently, all along, there's a gun being held to his head. So John Marnie writes to me in January 2019, said, oh, yeah, Ralph signed those, but it was under duress. So what am I accusing John Marnie of? Well, I'm accusing him of the things that are stated in the cross-claim. That's what I'm accusing him of. And I'm accusing him of not knowing the meaning of the word duress, because John Marnie's been a lawyer for, let's say, 40 years. Pretty sure he got his law degree at UNSW in about 1975 when I was about 6. So he's been a lawyer for a very long time, and he should know the meaning of the word duress. But he put that word in writing, said that Ralph signed it under duress, or something to that effect. It's fanciful, absolutely fanciful. So I have complained to the Office of Legal Services Commissioner about John Marnie. and a law firm called YPOL, YPOL, is, I don't know what it stands for, but they act for law cover. There is a claim. There has been a loss of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Ralph signed a deed. John Marnie witnessed the deed. John Marnie was involved in preparing the deed. John Marnie signed the consent order on behalf of his client, saying that if Ralph does not honour the deed, if he's in default, we can register, my lawyers could register a consent judgment. So, as I said, we spent tens of thousands of dollars on enforcing our rights. And John Marnie, now, I'm going to publish the letter. I'll have to have a look, make sure it's not without prejudice. I believe it's on the record. John Marnie writes that my lawyers fraudulently obtained the consent judgment. John Marnie also has a lawyer cannot contact the clients of another lawyer. Reliance and myself, my company, were represented by lawyers, the same lawyer, and John Marnie had some legitimate discussions with Mr. Steinberg of Reliance Leasing, but John Marnie then proceeded. I've got copies of all the text messages. John Marnie proceeded to then discuss court cases. John Marnie's been a lawyer for 40 years, whatever, long time, say 3 decades, at least 3 decades. He must know the rules of lawyers' rules. He does know. And he has conversations with other people's clients. He was warned in writing by our lawyers over and over not to discuss the case with Reliance Leasing. And its director is a guy called Gary Steinberg. Well, he did have some legitimate conversations with Gary Steinberg, but inevitably the conversation somehow turned to Ralph Palagaro, and at all times Marnie knew that Steinberg had a lawyer, and Marnie continued to talk to that other person's lawyer behind the back of the other lawyer. So when written to repeatedly, do not contact our client. Now, he could contact him on a friendly basis, but not to talk about the specifics of the case. So it's one interesting mess. There's a lot more to come on Ralph Palagaro. He's now over there in Fiji trying to operate a timber mill. Obviously, if he was successful in doing that, he would be selling all sorts of timber export. So Mohan Kumar, the guy who he's power of attorney, he's an underworld figure. Like apparently killed, like there's reports. Chota Rajan is his moniker. His real name is something other than, well, apparently, is something other than Mohan Kumar, but Mohan Kumar is now in India on a life sentence. He has been found guilty of killing, ordering a hit on a journalist for writing that, saying he was a gangster or something. The journalist is dead. And Kumar was, well, not Kumar, but the real person, whoever Mohan Kumar is, Ralph's employer, the person that Ralph owes a duty to, the client of John Marnie, at the same time when you've got clients called Bargo, Craig Adams, and Ralph Palagaru, all having different interests. John Marnie's the best lawyer in the world. I mean, he's able to juggle all these conflicts. It's just phenomenal what he can do. So it's a real interesting matter, and we will no doubt will pop up onto our website. Many of the documents, a lot of the emails, a lot of the circumstances. There's a chronology there. There's many documents there that Ralph's provided, all sorts of admissions. He's waived privilege. He's done all sorts of things, and Ralph is now saying not that he's a crook or not that he works for a murderer or did. He probably doesn't. Well, he still holds the power of attorney. So but he's now, Ralph, through Mr. Marnie, is saying, no, Mark Smith, you're the crook. You're the crook here. You fraudulently obtained the consent judgment. Oh, we issued a bankruptcy notice to Ralph, as I mentioned earlier on. So he's saying, well, we're the dirty ones. We're the dirty ones. We transferred $114,000 interest-free. We had a caveat. They say, no, never had any interest in the land, never owed any money. Withdrawals being given when they're held in escrow. It's one hell of a mess. To be continued. So 2021, what's that going to be all about? Well, we're going to be, as I said, building financial products, and there'll be a few links to a couple of those, and we'll talk a little bit more about that a lot, probably in every episode in 2021. We'll be talking about our AFSL, and particularly the Busy Fund Legal Services Capital Trust. And this is a fund that we've set up to, give investors something a bit different. So 2021, we'll certainly be talking endlessly about Westpac, and it will be absolutely shameful, some of the things that come out about Westpac Bank. We will be talking, no doubt, about Saunders and Staniforth, unless they happen to settle. We'll definitely be talking about Ralph. He's another R. We won't be probably talking about Hakan, but I think business interruption insurance is going to be, and insurance in general, it's an absolute, it's probably a necessity, but many people view it as an absolute rip-off. And we'll talk some more. Managed investment schemes. Now, that's something, preparing and setting up managed investment schemes is something that you can do with an AFSL, and that's something Busy Fund can do with our AFSL. So there'll be many real estate rorts that we talk about. Definitely in 2021, we're going to touch on some lovely people from the Orange region, Bernard and Fiona Hall. Their company, Bite Right Operations Proprietary Limited, Carnarvon Cherry, and we'll certainly talk about Bonnie Glen Fruits. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's going to be some public examinations into this company in 2021. So we'll see about that, and we'll talk about some of these foreign money lenders, and particularly I spend. Well, certainly next year, I intend to spend a lot more time in Orange, and our property out there has, it's set in a rural area. There you go, rural. There's another R. Rural. We're going to talk about rural issues, and I have nothing against China. I had a trip there about 12 months ago. I thought it was incredible. Different, and I mean, I didn't say beautiful, but I did say incredible. and I did say it's quite a staggering country, and what's going on there, the development and the scope. But there's also a lot of people, and I mean, I didn't quite appreciate with China the financing issues. I actually had to get money into China, and well, no one wants to get money into. If you're a trader, I went to China to buy a container load of product, and no one in China wants to receive their own currency. No one, like no trading business at all, wants to receive their own currency. They want to receive it in Hong Kong, and they want to receive it in US dollars. And it would seem, it certainly occurs to me that some of the quote unquote investments that are made in Australia in the rural space, I think we want to, as a nation, consider whether some of the, I think it's time to look and think about whether some of the investments that are coming to Australia by foreigners are really bona fide investments. So I'm not going to touch on that right now, but in 2021, I think it's something that we should talk about. And so that is the end of the beginning. Well, thank you again. It's been an interesting 2020. We haven't probably put on as many episodes as we'd like, but here we are. We're up to episode 3. We've started, and the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. So we're on the journey. For our next episode, I'm not sure if we'll have another one just before or around Christmas. And I suspect, though, there will be an Orange episode in either episode 4 or episode 5. We're going to be at the wonderful Snowgums Retreat at Orange, and we'll be taking you to meet some of our villains. Maybe not in person, but we'll be going to see some of our villains, and we'll go and see, Saunders and Staniforth. We may go to a place called Cabonne Council. We haven't talked very much about them, but yes, we'll see where we go with Cabonne. We will probably go and visit how I described one of the biggest employers in the district there, which is called Carnarvon Cherry. Now, they managed, as I've said in season 1, that this is a company that employs has employed something like 900 employees out of a tin shed. So much bigger employer. You've heard of KDM Iron out there employing, the current owners are spending 600 or 700 million. A lot of money, maybe $1 billion, doing upgrades. Well, I don't even think they've got 900 employees. So yet our friends at Carnarvon Cherry have 900 employees. And look, we might even go and visit some of their employees. I mean, some of their employees, there's like 50 to 100 of them that just don't have an address, or their address is same address as the Carnarvon Cherry office. They don't have a date of birth. They don't have a tax file number. They don't have a superannuation fund. Yet, they're earning $4,000 working 180 hours in the week. So 4,800 maybe in the case of one fellow who doesn't have a date of birth, who's under 18, like no tax file number. He's under 18. He's claiming the tax-free threshold. Doesn't have a date of birth. Gets paid in check. Look, we're definitely going to visit the Westpac branch in Orange. that is where the Carnarvon Cherry check account is domiciled. And we have written to the, at the time, he was the CEO, and we certainly wrote to the chairman of Westpac. Now, poor darlings, they're no longer employed there. They the victim of that money laundering fustercluck, they're called, where the bank got fined, was it $1.3 billion? Well, anyway, we wrote to the chairman and CEO and told them, we gave them a list of checks and said, hold these. Look, we'll go and visit Orange Police. We'll take a video out on the street there, and we'll explain the relevance of Orange Police while we're there. Got nothing bad to say about Orange Police, just probably maybe not a lot of good. But we might even go and visit the Centrelink office at Orange. Many of the Carnarvon workers there allegedly well, we'll talk about it. We might go and see some of the benefits of foreign investment in the Orange district, and we'll see what Chinese money. It doesn't have to be Chinese, but can be Chinese. Foreign money. Let's just call it foreign money. We'll look at some of the great examples and some of the great value adds that some of our foreign investors have brought to that part of the world. We'll certainly go and visit Rain and Horn at Orange. That's downstairs, and upstairs is the illustrious Saunders and Staniforth. And funnily enough, both Rain and Horn and Saunders and Staniforth are probably liable to be held in contempt. They've both been served subpoenas, and here we are. Neither of them have complied. One's downstairs and one's upstairs. Now, unrelated companies, but Roger Eddy is the director of the Rain and Horn Orange, and we've got Mitch Staniforth and Andrew Saunders upstairs. I'm not suggesting these companies are co-owned, or heaven forbid they've done a merger, but I will tell you that the same office for Saunders and Staniforth had merged. According to Saunders and Staniforth, you would go and have a look at their website, or there's a link to their website on the Saunders page. So just Google DC Partners Saunders and Staniforth, and you'll be able to see an extract of their webpage where it talks about the merger. So anyway, as I started to say, happy Christmas. We'll probably be coming to you just the other side of Christmas from Orange. There is so many wonderful sights to see in Orange, such as the ones that I've talked about, the Centrelinks, the police, the Westpac branch, the Carnarvon Cherry. Heaven forbid, no longer, we can't call it Carnarvon Cherry. We must be called Bite Right Operations. Look, we'll go and have a look at let me put it this way. We'll go and have a look at my easement. I've had one or two run-ins with some people that want to pretend that there's no easement that's been there since the 1970s. So, well, anyway, so that brings us to the end of Season 1, Episode 3. So thank you very much for your attention. Happy Christmas. Stay safe, drive safe, and we'll see you in Episode 4, possibly from Orange, but maybe from Sydney. Thank you.